All right, so here we are. The draft is tomorrow, so I wanted to take a quick look, as quick as I can. When it's almost madness, isn't it? Is there enough magnets to qualify as madness, or does the amount of names make it madness? You can decide. On the left side of the board is the first round pick for each team this year in blue, or not this year, 2017 in blue, 2016 in black. If a team had more than one first round draft pick in any given season, I only included the first. Because teams can reach on that second or third draft pick in the first round. That first one is this is the key guy. Then after that, you can kind of relax and say, well, now that we've got him, we can kind of maybe go off the board, maybe go with more of a risky pick. The noticeable thing on here, Pittsburgh didn't have a first round pick last year or the year before. So Pittsburgh might want to start getting draft picks because they didn't win the Stanley Cup this year. They're out in the second round, and you've got to make sure that you have enough prospects to make up for when guys like Crosby and Malkin are done. Now, you can't replace Crosby and Malkin, but depth became an issue this year, and we'll see where they go next year. Anaheim, 2 years ago, drafted Jones as their first pick. Of course, they had Sam Steele that year as well. Arizona, Joseph was their first-round pick last year. Clayton Keller the year before. Vakanainen, I better get used to that name because he's coming over, was drafted by Boston last year, and McAvoy the year before. Buffalo drafted Casey Middlestad last year, and Alex Nylander the year before. Valimaki was a first-round pick last year for Calgary, and Matt Tkachuk the year before that. Carolina, Nikash last year, and the year before it was Bean. Yoki Haru was the first-rounder last year. I'm going to have to get on that name, too. You know, it's a shame that Bob Cole's career is winding down, because there's some names that will really twist his tongue in knots. But at least we still got Don Cherry, so, you know, that's going to be fun to watch. Him trying to say either of those names during, highlight reel. Colorado, Makar, who isn't playing this coming season but should be good to go. I think it's next year he's done with his college. At the very least, he could turn pro, I think, next year. Jost, the year before that. So Colorado is in pretty good shape. Columbus didn't have a first-rounder last year. They traded it so they could lose William Karlsson instead of other players they didn't want to lose. Dubois was drafted 2 years ago. Heiskanen, who's coming over to play for Dallas this fall. Tufte the year before. Rasmussen was a first-round pick last year for Detroit. Chaluzki the year before. Yamamoto, first-round pick last year of the Oilers. Puljujarvi the year before. So the Oilers sticking with skilled, fast players in the draft. Florida, Owen Tippett last year was a first-rounder. Borgstrom the year before. Florida fans are excited about Borgstrom. Velarde was his first-round pick for LA last year, and they didn't have one the year before that. Luke Cunnin, last year, wasn't their first-round draft pick because they lost their first-round draft pick again. This was because of the Vegas thing. Vegas really affected a lot of last year's first round. They had 3 first-round picks, and there was a lot of movement that happened last year in the first round. Poling, I spelled that wrong. There's an H that's supposed to be in there. He was drafted first round last year by Montreal. Sergachev the year before. Of course, Sergachev's now a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tolvanen, first round pick last year for Nashville. Dante Fabro the year before. Nico Hischier, number 1 pick last year. Michael McLeod the year before was their first round pick. Kiefer Bellows 2 years ago for the Islanders was their first rounder. They didn't have one last year, but they got 2 this year, and they're in a row. We'll see how that turns out for them. Elias Anderson, first round pick last year for the Rangers. Of course, they drafted Hedel last year as well. Bowers was first round pick last year for Ottawa. Of course, he is now in the Colorado organization. And Logan Brown 2 years ago was the number 1 pick. Nolan Patrick, first round pick for Philly last year. Rubtsov the year before. Pittsburgh, as I said, didn't have a first round pick the last 2 years. Thomas, first round pick last year for St. Louis. Thompson the year before that. So if you're a St. Louis fan, the first time they come up to make a draft pick, it may start with THOM. Because the last 2 years it has. They don't have a first round pick though. So it won't actually be like a podium pick unless they trade into the draft, into the first round. Josh Norris, first round pick last year for San Jose. Callum Foote, first-round pick for Tampa last year. Brett Howden the year before that. Liljegren, first-round pick for Toronto last year. I know there's Leaf fans that are excited about that pick, and rightfully so. Austin Matthews the year before. So for all of the criticism that Austin Matthews gets, he's only 2 years out from being drafted. So weird. I mean, I can get into how many years it takes for some of these guys that are in the Hall of Fame to actually win something, but it's a little bit early to be saying he's overrated or he choked or weird. Anyways, Vancouver, their last 2 picks, of course, both of them at 5 overall. Pettersson and Hugh Levy. Both could be in the lineup in October. Cody Glass was the first of 3 first-round picks for Vegas last year. Lucas Johansson was first-round pick of Washington 2 years ago. They didn't have a first-rounder last year. They kept it this year and still won the Stanley Cup. Vesalainen, first-round pick last year for Winnipeg, and Line, of course, the year before. So what are you getting in the draft? Well, on this board, I've color-coded 2017, 2016, 2015, 14, and 13. So the last 5 picks at each spot. And we'll get into how well each spot necessarily does. If you're drafting first, you're getting a good player because Hischier, Matthews, McDavid, Ekblad, McKinnon, there isn't a dud in the bunch. McKinnon had a fantastic year this year. A little overdue, but he had it. Ekblad has recovered from injury issues he suffered from the previous season and looks to be good. Of course, McDavid, the best offensive player in the NHL. Matthews is far better than I think a lot of the criticism he's been getting since the playoffs. I really don't get it. And Nico Hischier is an under-the-radar star for New Jersey. He really is. He's very under the radar. Second-round pick, well, Patrick and Laine. So there you go. Patrick last year, Laine the year before. See, Laine's first name, it doesn't matter. Eichel, Reinhart, and Barkov. So at second overall, you can argue that Sam Reinhart hasn't really become what he was supposed to be, but Eichel's been excellent, Laine's been excellent, Nolan Patrick looked better in the second half of the season than he did in the first half, and Sasha Barkov's one of the best players in the league as far as two-way forwards go. So you're getting a pretty good player at 2. 3, Heiskanen, Dubois, Strome, Draisaitl, and Drouin. Here's where it gets a little bit dicey. Heiskanen hasn't come over yet, so we can't say for sure. Dubois got better during the season and looks fantastic for Columbus right now. Dylan Strome, lots to talk about. He's a bust, but we don't know yet, and he looked decent at the end of the year. Draisaitl's been excellent. Jonathan Drouin still finding his way at the NHL level. 4th overall, Makar, Puljujarvi, Marner, Bennett, and Jones. Marner stands out because at the time he was drafted, Hanifin looked like the natural pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And honestly, if you're looking at a landing spot for Noah Hanifin, it should be Toronto that's on the map. Toronto would be a fantastic spot for him. Makar we'll see in the NHL probably in 2019. Puljujarvi has struggled at times. Hasn't quite taken the NHL by storm the way he was supposed to. Sam Bennett has had issues as well. Does he stay in Calgary long term? What's going to happen with Bennett? And of course, Seth Jones. He slid that year, which is kind of odd. He was actually projected to go first overall. Would Tampa, rather, looking back, have drafted Seth Jones than Jonathan Drouin? Probably. Probably so. At 5, well, the Canucks show up here. Pettersson and Hugh Levy, of course, are the 2 most recent. Haven't played yet. Hanifin's been excellent. Dal Cole, I don't know that he ever makes the NHL. I'm just being honest. And if he does, I don't think he'll ever live up to his potential from early on. And Elias Lindholm, who gets better every year. And I would imagine that should continue now with Carolina hopefully headed in the right direction. At 6, Cody Glass, Matt Tkachuk. Glass hasn't played yet. Pavel Zacha, who is working and training and getting up there, and we'll see if he makes that step next year. Virtanen, there's always talk. Anytime you talk to a Canucks fan, at some point, so Jake Virtanen, and the question is always, what are we going to do with him? What kind of forward is he? Is he a top 6? Is he a third liner? Sean Monahan, excellent for Calgary. So you're into kind of a hit and miss territory once you get to 6th in the draft. 7th, Anderson, Keller. Keller was up for the Norris, of course. Norris. Calder. Provorov, excellent defenseman. Hayden Fleury hasn't shown yet what he may be able to become, and defensemen can take longer to develop. Darnell Nurse. Oilers fans seem to be fans of his, and I am as well. Bit of a shift disturber, the type that you need out there. At 8th overall, Casey Middlestad. Of course, Buffalo got him at the end of the year. Alex Nylander, Buffalo, looking for him to step up next year as well. Zach Werenski, Columbus, excellent player. William Nylander, fantastic. And Ristolainen, who's on the trade board, and we'll get into the trade bait after I'm done with this video, because I want to talk about this. Ristolainen has been, excellent for Buffalo, considering it's not optimal circumstances to bring in a young defenseman and basically go, here you go, you get to run it. It's a rough situation. So he's done as well as I think he can be expected to. 9th overall, you got Rasmussen, hasn't played yet. Sergachev has looked excellent. Timo Meier, who took a lot of steps this year towards being one of the better players. Nick Ehlers, who, depending on who you ask, is a really solid young forward or didn't quite show up in the playoffs the way you'd want him to. Bo Horvat, one of my favorite players, fantastic. When you're looking at Bo Horvat and you're looking up here at a Nathan McKinnon, an Ekblad, Matthews, you can see the separation. You can see how whoever gets drafted at 9th, the odds of them being better than the guy who's drafted at 1st, they're very slim. At 10, Owen Tippett, Tyson Jost, Mikko Rantanen, Nick Ritchie, and Nichushkin. Nick Ritchie stands out here as a guy that hasn't quite got to where he was supposed to be. Nichushkin's coming back this year. Dallas will see if he's legitimately a top 6 forward. I think that's the plan. If they get him, and if they were to sign, say, Kovalchuk, Dallas, their problem was goaltending and defense. All right, anyways, it's that brain pain that gets in there sometimes as a Dallas fan. We'll just win every game 8-5. No, you won't. Jost stands out as a guy that kind of flew under the radar last year as well, and we'll see where he ends up this year in terms of, is he going to be top 6 for Colorado and get in there and really help them become a contender. They need further development of these young kids in Colorado to really get to that next level. At 11, Velarde, Logan Brown, Krause, Fiala, and Morin. So at this point, you're into hit and miss. You're absolutely into hit and miss. Morin hasn't established himself as an NHL defenseman full-time yet. Fiala's excellent. Krause has had a lot of time in the American Hockey League. Logan Brown and Velarde haven't come up yet. At 12, Nikash, who hasn't come up yet. McLeod, who's had time in the minors. We'll see if he gets his shot with the Devils next year. Gurianov, who I watched a couple of those Texas games, and I tell you, oh boy, I don't foresee him being a Dallas Star next year. I don't. Brandon Perlini, of course, good forward, and Max Domi, the newest member of the Montreal Canadiens. 13, Nick Suzuki, Jake Bean, Jakub Sporl, Jakub Vrana, and Josh Morrissey. So what you've got here is Morrissey, who's established himself as a top 4 defenseman. Vrana, who turned out to be very useful for the Stanley Cup champions in the finals. And then you've got 3 guys who haven't played yet in the NHL. So that's at 13. At 14, you got Callum Foote, Charlie McAvoy, Jake DeBrusk. Also, big props to him. Lots of guts with that kid. Julius Honka, well, Dallas fan, right? And Alexander Wenberg, who's, depending on who you ask, was really disappointing this year, or maybe the bar was raised too much from the year before. Anyways, he's young enough to bounce back. So again, you're looking at here, McAvoy was in the running for the Calder, and I'm probably going to do a video on trophy voting as well. There's a lot of different things I can do votes on videos on right now, and the trophy votes, I think it'd be very interesting to look at who got votes and where. But yeah, McAvoy was in that. DeBrusk, fantastic. So you're still, your odds of getting a good player are what? 4 out of 5 of these guys are keepers at the NHL level. At 15, Brandstrom. Brandstrom, not Brunstrom. Cunnin, Senyshyn, Larkin, and Pulak. So Pulak has been hopefully given a new lease on life with the Islanders now that everything's changed. Dylan Larkin, I like Larkin a lot. I always get questions from Detroit fans about what do I think of Larkin. He's good. Senyshyn, I never liked the pick. If I'd had this channel in 2015 when they drafted Senyshyn, it would have been one of the great YouTube videos of rage and cursing and throwing things that you've ever seen, because I was just livid. Because when they drafted Senyshyn, see, Barzell and Connor were still on the board. So Boston's Boril, DeBrusk, and Senishin, only DeBrusk has come through. And again, Don Sweeney, I've gone easy on since then because he's done a pretty good job since then. But this draft really didn't make me happy. Really didn't make me happy. So if you're looking at number 15 spot, Cunnin, he's got injury issues now that have kept Minnesota fans from knowing what they got with him. Larkin's been fantastic, and it's still too early to say on Brandstrom. At 16, Valimaki, Chychrun, Barzell, Milano, and Zadorov. So 16, Valimaki, we'll see what he is probably this fall. The other 4, bona fide NHL talents. Part of what's changed between now and 20 or 30 years ago is scouting is so much better now. You see so much more of these players than you would have 20 or 30 years ago. And so the accuracy when these guys go up there and call names is better. So when a guy slides at the draft, and there's always 1 or 2 guys who slide at the draft, that sliding player, there's usually a reason. And so scouts are agreeing on that reason. At 17, Liljegren, who slid at the draft, that's due more to health issues he had his draft year. And he's done very well for himself in the American League this year. And remember, defensemen can take longer to develop. So the fact he's playing in the American Hockey League against men right out of the gate is good for him. Fabro, Connor, Sanheim, and Lazar. Lazar hasn't really panned out as a top 6 forward, certainly. Sanheim, we're still waiting to see exactly what he's going to be. Kyle Connor was fantastic this year for Winnipeg. And Fabro, we could find out as soon as October where Fabro's at. At 18, Vakanainen, Stanley, Shabbat, Tuck, and Mueller. So here, Mirko, of course, has top 6, maybe top 4. Tuck has been excellent for Vegas. Shabbat looked pretty darn good for Ottawa in when he was in the lineup. Stanley, there's still the idea that Stanley's going to need time, but he's a huge defenseman. So huge defensemen take a while. Take it from a Zdeno Chara fan. And Vakanainen, we'll find out in the fall where he's at. At 19, Norris from this past year. Kiefer Bellows the year before, and I was a huge fan of Brian Bellows, so I really hope Kiefer comes in well. And if Kiefer Bellows comes in and can play for the Islanders right out of the gate, Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz might look like geniuses right off the bat. Svechnikov, of course, Detroit fans are still waiting on Svechnikov to realize that full potential. D'Angelo was a guy who was supposed to go right in about 12 or 13. Dropped down to 19. Had the talent to be top 8 that year. But attitude, personality were the reasons he dropped to 19th. And I remember when he was picked, I believe it was Tampa picked him at 19, and Steve Yzerman was like, all right, well, we think we can help him turn it around. D'Angelo's changed hands a couple of times since then. So my guess is it didn't exactly get turned around, or he just hasn't had the ceiling that was expected of him. And Kirby Reichel was the year before. So if you're drafting in here, of the 5 guys in here, 2 of them haven't reached the NHL level yet. So the jury's out on them. Svechnikov is hoping to be a regular NHLer next year. Kirby Reichel is not at the NHL level, and D'Angelo is hit and miss. So this is where early first round, later first round, your odds start to really drop that you're drafting necessarily a big top guy here. At 20, Thomas, Chalewski, Eriksson, Schmaltz, and Mantha. Schmaltz and Mantha stand out among this group of 5. Easily. Nick Schmaltz, my favorite Blackhawk right now. And then I think about it, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure. I'll just throw that out there and we'll just leave it at that. Mantha has been pretty darn good for Detroit and shows that Mantha at 20, Larkin at 15, you don't have to be drafting in the top 5 to necessarily fill your top 6 forwards. But without one of these kinds of big name talents, it can be really hard to get into the playoffs. It can be really hard to make that step above those teams that have those big names down the middle. So Mantha rounds that out. Eriksson is still seemingly finding his way at the NHL level, but he's definitely young enough to turn things around. And Chalewski is still young, hasn't made the NHL yet, defenseman, so you wait on him. So we'll move on to 21. Hedel, Gauthier, White, Fabry, and Gauthier again. So 2 guys named Gauthier drafted at 21. And Frederick Gauthier, I don't know that he ever makes the NHL. I don't. Fabry, we're hoping that Robbie Fabry is healthy this fall. I know he's supposed to be, but until you see him on the ice and he's actually out there skating and he's pain free, I'm just got my fingers crossed because that made a big difference to St. Louis. St. Louis fell one game short of making the playoffs. If Fabry's in that lineup all year, who knows how things would have gone for St. Louis. White, I would think he makes the team next year. I would think, but again, there's some uncertainty in there. Julien Gauthier, Hedl should be in the lineup come the fall. 22, you got Yamamoto, Rubtsov, Samsonov. That's Ilya Samsonov, the goaltender that Washington just signed. Kapanen and Poirier. Poirier, I don't know that he's still on the Flames' radar as a guy that they're grooming to be an NHLer, or if they've kind of given up on him and he's just playing out the string. Kasperi Kapanen, of course, since being drafted by Pittsburgh, is now property of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I like Kapanen a lot. I really hope he gets a shot at regular time with the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. Samsonov, we'll see what happens with him. Rubtsov and Yamamoto. Yamamoto looked okay. He looked great at the start for the Edmonton Oilers, but by the end of that run he had with the Oilers, it was clear that he needed some more time. At 23, Joseph, Borgstrom, Besser, Bleakley, Burakovsky. 4 Bs out of 5 picks. Joseph's the one that's not the B. Bleakley, is Connor Bleakley? No idea. Burakovsky, well, he held up a Stanley Cup, so he's clearly a good player. Borgstrom, signed by Florida. We'll see what he is in the fall. And Besser, he's my favorite player in the NHL, so he's up there anyways. It's a tough call right now with my favorite players in the NHL. Yeah, I need to do a video on it. I know. So there you go. 23 is actually a pretty darn good pick when you look at it. 24, Vesalainen, Max Jones, Konechny, McCann, and Shinkaruk. So 2 Canucks. Shinkaruk, McCann, both cases, they're sliding down the first round. And when the Canucks picked them, in both cases, I'm like, yes. I remember McCann was projected to go as high as 15th. And when McCann was picked up by the Canucks, I'm like, yes, that's that two-way forward they need to complement Horvat. Here we go. We've got 2 centers. We're on our way. Didn't quite work out that way. I know McCann had a couple of good little runs there with Florida. But overall, I think his top 6 upside is limited. Shinkaruk, on the other hand, he can't seem to get out of the American Hockey League. Konechny's been excellent for Philly. Max Jones, Anaheim's going to give him a shot at the lineup this fall. Vesalainen, I would think, is going to get a shot at training camp with Winnipeg to make the lineup. Winnipeg could be in cap hell soon, and having a couple of guys like a Vesalainen on the blue line who are on an entry-level contract playing well could be huge in averting that. Now into 25. Wow, I spelled that wrong both times, or is there not an H in it? Let me just go take. Okay, yeah, there's an H in it. Ryan Poehling has an H in his name. I don't know why. I don't know if I butcher it because he's a Montreal prospect. I don't want to think that I do because I haven't got Montreal names wrong more than other teams. Anyways, he was the number 25 pick last year. Riley Tufte the year before. Roslovic the year before for Winnipeg. Pasternak the year before that. And McCarron the year before that. So, Pasternak's fantastic. Roslovic has a lot of upside. And after that, we'll see. Poehling played well this year for St. Cloud State. Brought up his stock among scouts and management types. We'll see where it goes from there. But this is kind of the difference. See, we've gone from great, these guys are great, or yeah, this guy's coming in this year, looks great, to, well, maybe. And Pasternak, because Pasternak slipped down because if Vancouver had drafted, no, that's not what this is about, Shannon. Let it go. 26, Jake Ottinger's drafted by these guys in the first round. Thompson drafted by St. Louis the year before. Noah Juleson the year before that for Montreal. Nikita Sherbak the year before that. And Shea Theodore by Anaheim the year before that. And of course, Theodore is now a Vegas Golden Knight. You know what's interesting? Is looking at how many of these guys that are on this board as first-round draft picks over the last 5 years are now members of the Vegas team. That's an interesting little fun game. And it shows that even though Vegas came in, with just the same amount of draft picks as everybody else and just this expansion ideal, they were able to secure a lot of good young talent with a high upside that other teams just didn't have access to when they came into the league. But if you've been watching my history of the NHL videos, I will eventually get into how expansion worked, how expansion was supposed to work, and how it sometimes doesn't work, and why we saw a better expansion team this year than ever before. But that's not for this video. At 27th overall, Frost was drafted last year in the first round at 27. Howden the year before that. Jacob Larson, Nikolai Goldobin, and Marco Dano. Well, it's a mixed bag at 27, isn't it? I mean, Larson could turn out to be a fantastic forward. Goldobin's still young enough that, yes, he could eventually be 20 goal scorer, but Goldobin's in that category where is he good enough to be a top 6? He's not physical enough to be a bottom 6, so where are you going to play him? And that's the issue that faces any team that has Goldobin, and right now it's the Canucks. At 28, Bowers, who of course was drafted by the Senators, and now is a member of the Colorado Avalanche franchise. Johansson, Beauvillier, Hosang, and Klimchuk. So again, you're into kind of a mixed bag. Beauvillier has turned out to be much better than I think a lot of people had expected at 28, but Hosang, on the other hand, hasn't really had that chance to become a solid NHLer, as I mentioned in the Islanders video today about them drafting, or about them signing Barry Trotz, but there's still the chance that it's going to work out for Josh Hosang, definitely. Yoki Haru for Chicago at 29. Trent Frederick, who is signed with Boston, and let's hope it's another home run for the Bruins. Gabriel Carlson, Adrian Kempe, and Jason Dickinson. Dickinson's another first rounder of these guys that I watched in Texas Stars games, and I hope he was more impressive the rest of the season for the Texas Stars than what I saw from him. He has skill, but he gets pushed off the puck, and yeah, there's things I saw that made me go, oh, he's not NHL ready, and he's a ways out from his draft year. It was 2013 he was drafted, so we're into that spot where all of a sudden the team will be like, and we're not re-signing him, and then he ends up in Europe kind of thing, so fingers crossed. Thankfully, he was drafted right ahead of Ryan Hartman, and Ryan Hartman's not the kind of forward that, Dallas could really use a Ryan Hartman. Anyways, at 30, Tolvanen last year, Sam Steele the year before, Nick Merkley the year before that, John Quenneville the year before that, and of course, as I said, Hartman the year before that. So at 30, NHLer, Tolvanen looks like he's good enough to be an NHLer in the fall, and we'll see with the other three where they're at. Quenneville should be good to go this fall, but he was kind of on a lot of people's radar coming into this past season as well. So we'll see how many games he gets. 31, which was a second-round draft pick until this past year. Kostin was the first rounder the 31st pick last year. Korshkov the year before. Jeremy Roy. I think it's Jeremy Roy because he's in Quebec. Brandon Lemieux, who's supposed to be good enough to make the Jets next year, and Ian McCoshen. So there, you're looking at 5 guys. None of them have regular NHL jobs out of the 5. McCoshen's had, shots at it. Lemieux looks like he's going to have a shot at it this fall. But that's what you can expect in the first round this year. You go from fantastic to pretty good to okay to, well, it's kind of a mixed bag. And there are going to be guys who are supposed to get drafted towards the end of this row who get drafted here. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I had no idea this was going to take this long. When I do these monster madness videos, this is just kind of the way things work out. Thanks for making it to the end if you did. And if you didn't, you're not watching right now anyway, so I can't thank you for anything. But hey, the draft's tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much for watching. I do have something else draft related to do a video about today, and it won't take 29 minutes to get through. I'll talk to you again soon.